In this video, we're going to build a 2 push button circuit with 1 LED and work our way up to 3 LEDs. To start, I'm going to get in the habit of putting the ground, so G and D, to the blue negative line. This will just let me pull from this blue line and always hook it up to ground. Remember, your board might be slightly different. So my analog side is over here, and on this other board the analog is over here. So the digital is over here on this board and the digital is over here on this board. You just need to accommodate for that when building your circuit. So far, I took the green wire from G and D, so the letters G and D, and mine's conveniently marked right there, to the blue negative line. So anything on this blue negative line will be connected. Looking at the push button, you should have 4 legs on it. It should kind of look like a turtle, and it should have a little button that you can push. This is going to bridge the gap. So when you look at this push button, you're going to have it bridge the gap. So I put it just on the other side. So technically mine's in 1F, 3F, 1E, and 3E. Working off of that, I'm going to take a red wire and I'm going to look for 5 volts. So 5 volts on the analog side is right next to ground, and it ends up being right there. I'll zoom in so that way you can see it. Looking for 5 volts, and this is going to be plugged into the red positive line. So I went from 5 volts to the red positive line. So now anything in this red positive line, when it's hooked up to it, it'll have 5 volts of power. The next thing I'm going to want to do is take a yellow wire, and on the left hand side, so row 3 for me of this push button, I'm going to plug it in and plug it into the red positive line. Actually, I need to use a red wire for that. A red wire from the top side of that push button to the red positive line. So now what I have is I have part of this push button hooked up to 5 volts. When you push this button, it creates a complete circuit, because it will, when you push this down, it will connect the circuit between these two. So right now, when it's not pushed, this circuit is unbroken. Using the yellow wire now, I'm going to go in row 1, so the bottom side of this push button, and I'm going to plug this all the way over into, I need a longer yellow wire, all the way over into, I need a longer yellow wire yet. So those yellow wires were not long enough. I'm going to be using blue ones that are. So once again, I'm going to go on the bottom side of this push button. So row 3 is connected to that leg. This leg is in row 1. So I'm going to connect this in 1H all the way over to digital pin number 3. We are almost done hooking this push button up. The last thing we need to do, we have power and then we have digital power, so now we need to hook it up to ground. Using a resistor in the same row as that blue wire, in row 1, I'm going to hook up a resistor. Make it look a little bit nicer. I'm going to hook this up to a blue negative line. So to show you a different angle, to show you one more angle, so I have a resistor in the same row as the blue wire, and then the red wire is in the other side. I'm going to repeat this with my other push button and space a little bit further away so that way I have some room to work. So putting this across the gaps, mine ends up being in row 13 and 11. The first thing I'm going to do in the top side of that push button, so row 13 for me, is I'm going to use a red wire and hook this up to the red positive line for power. The second thing I'm going to do is the bottom side of that push button, so row 11, I'm going to use a blue wire and hook that up to digital pin number 2. The reason I got these 2 digital pins is that's what we're going to use for our code. And the last part in row 11, the same as the blue wire, I'm going to hook a resistor to the blue negative line. So now my two push buttons are completely connected. It's the same thing, but it's just spaced out a little bit more. One thing that should be pretty normal for you to hook up by now is a LED. The short end of the LED I'm going to have further away from, actually I'm going to have it closer to the blue board. So the short end for me is going to be in 30F for this LED. And then I'm going to take a resistor, and in row 30 I'm going to plug in the resistor to the blue negative line. Now I gotta find a wire that's long enough for this to connect. Looks like it'll be another blue line. And I'm gonna plug this into digital pin number 9. So now I have a complete circuit. So I have ground going to the LED, the long end of the LED connected to digital pin number 9. Moving along, so using the short end of the LED, it's going to go across the gap. The short end is going to be closest to this blue part, and then the resistor is going to be plugged into the blue negative line. I'm going to hook up the other LED before I talk about the wires. So the short end of the LED is going to go closest to this blue board, and then the resistor is going to be plugged in from the short end to the blue negative line as well. Now this last part, this will depend entirely upon your code. So just to reinforce the idea, I'm using blue for these. The long end of the LED will be connected to these blue wires, and the other end of these blue wires will be in digital pins that you need to look at your code to identify what digital pins they are.